Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
The censorship lives on. Good afternoon, everybody across the country and across the world. Rebel News Daily live stream with myself and Matt Brevner. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing excellent. Got a fresh cup of coffee. I'm nestled in. There's a lot going on in the country today, and I can't wait to get into it with you, my friend. Let's do it.
Everybody's paying attention to these stories across the world, from Ottawa to the Montana-Alberta border. Everybody wants to see the Kean Simones, the Sydneys, the Lincolns, and everybody at those protests. So we're joining you here on YouTube, Super U, Rumble, Odyssey, and of course Getter today. I believe we get a thumbs up from that. Yes, we're on Getter Live. We've been doing some live streams with them as well lately. So welcome to anybody joining from that broadcast. We do a live stream here every single day. You can super chat us on different channels such as Rumble, the Rumble Rants, Odyssey, Hyper Chats, and Super U has paid chats now as well. And we want to kick it off, Matt, with some great news from our Prime Minister. You know, the government of Canada is in full swing of supporting everybody's rights and, you know, making sure that everybody feels welcomed and having their voices heard. So let's go ahead and throw up that first tweet from the Prime Minister of Canada. He says, today in the House, which was yesterday, members of Parliament unanimously condemned the anti-Semitism, the Islamophobia, the anti-black racism, homophobia, and transphobia that we've seen on display in Ottawa over the past number of days together. Let's keep working to make Canada more inclusive. Matt Brevner, has anyone seen any of this stuff?
For some reason, CTV and CBC are really good at finding this stuff, but they're about the only people who have been seeing it. So I don't know if they have really long lenses on their cameras or what, but yeah, it's almost like a Where's Waldo situation in these protests. You know, the only people who seem to be finding it are the people who are actually, you know, propagating. So surprise, surprise, right?
Well, we had Flag Guy 1 and Flag Guy 2, which nobody can seem to identify for some reason. The only guy wearing a mask had the Confederate flag. Then the only guy with a swastika can't be identified by anyone for some reason. Some people think he was photoshopped. That's how little people have seen of him. But he is seen on video in another one. My guess, he pulls it out for 10 seconds, gets his photograph, and then puts it away, or else people would be like, get out of here, just as they did with the guy with the Confederate flag. And then you've got reports of people harassing a soup kitchen. Haven't seen any video of that. There was the report of an ambulance getting rocks thrown at it with racial slurs on Parliament Hill, you know, the place where 100,000 people had their camera phones. Nobody saw any of that. So I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying, why is there no evidence of this stuff when we have seen Nazi flag and Confederate flag guy? There's actual footage or still photo of that, but these other claims they keep having, nobody seems to have footage of. There he is in his minstrel show, like, mask, and then everybody telling him to get out because it's really creepy and weird. And, like, if this was real, Matt, what's the idea here with this guy? Let me go and see if my views are accepted.
I mean, if that was the case, I don't think he'd be wearing a balaclava. And I'm pretty sure when the Confederate was founded, trucks weren't invented like that.
Yeah.
They weren't semis. So
pretty fresh flag. People were also pointing out the Nazi flag also had folds in it. So, you know, the usual stuff. Canada's not as well equipped as the FBI, so it's hard for them to get everything in order as quickly as the FBI does in terms of, you know, faking things, quote unquote, allegedly, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Nobody's saying anything going against.
Wait a second. Are we talking about the swastika flag on Parliament Hill, or are we talking about the swastika flag at the Liberal presser a few years ago that Trudeau welcomed? Is that the one we're talking about?
I don't know. Is there a clip of that?
They're so rare. They're so rare in Canada. I get them confused. You don't often see those. So.
You know, they shut down a motion to condemn Justin Trudeau's blackface, so who knows what's going on there. Like I said, the government is really showing their true colors. They've been pushed to the edge here, and what do? They quadruple down. They start lying. So obviously, all the stuff Trudeau's saying is ridiculous. Jason Kenney is making claims that the RCMP got attacked by, you know, the guys sitting in their truck at the border who aren't allowed to, like, see anybody, which is an interesting claim. I believe the RCMP said that didn't happen. Do we want to pull up his quote there, producer, please, and we can read that as well. I believe the RCMP came out and stated that nobody's been attacked, just like the police in Ottawa have said that It's been overwhelmingly peaceful. But CTV is reporting now that a third person has been arrested in Ottawa. I'm not sure why. They used the photo of people playing hockey, which is an interesting juxtaposition of imagery there. And it just frightens me, shocks me. I don't know what word to use, Matt Brevner, but the amount of people who are fans of these mainstream media outlets that were, anti-police, anti-government, all of a sudden literal workers are standing up against the government, and now they're just like, no, let's take their money away from them. Let's seize their GoFundMe dollars. Let's take away their driver's licenses, I think I saw somebody say. What's going on here where all of a sudden the people who hated police and the government and don't like the Conservative Party and people are now going against them? What's going on with these people now being back on the side of the government and now all of a sudden wanting businesses to be open and wanting people to be able to live normal lives?
Well, I think it's just largely punitive. I think I had a conversation with a very good friend, one of my best friends, maybe 15 years last week. And he's been, he didn't understand for a long time why people can't just get the thing and move on with their lives. And he's starting to see, he had a few friends that got hurt. He's starting to see the hypocrisy and the flip-flopping on the mandates. And he was like, man, I just wanted to end. I just want to go back to regular life. And I'm like, I'm like, me personally, I don't think I could ever participate. I don't think that's a good enough reason for me to just do something. And he's like, you know what? Like 90% of us did it. We did what we were told to do, and we stepped up and we did it. So I think that's the thought. It's not really about, does it make sense? Are we doing this because it's the right thing to do? But it's like, we stepped up. You should step up too. And if you're not willing to participate, then that's some sort of merit on how good of a citizen you are. Luckily, I've known this guy for like 15 years, so there was more grace in our conversation. But I think the average person feels like, why can't you just do what you're told? And that's why you're seeing like the flip-flopping on policy. That's why you see people who said abolish the police are now saying police do something. It's the why can't you just get along? Why can't you just participate? Why can't you just be a good citizen thing? And if you can't participate, then you should be punished, right?
Yeah, I think it goes along the lines of the mainstream media culture and the Hollywood pop culture narrative that you're allowed to go back and forth on these things. You don't have to be held to a standard. It's whatever the popular thing of the day is. What are we looking at here? Yes, yeah. They want them to be using their own. City of Ottawa considers legal action to recoup protest costs. And they show a picture of a guy whose tires without wheels. I don't know how this is like damaging to the city at all, but they want to take their GoFundMe funding. It's ridiculous. But this culture of we'll forget what we said a week later and it's okay if we go back and forth on this. This is what all these people buy into. It's okay to, support BLM and defunding the police one week and the next week, please save us, police. I mean, that happens at these protests, Antifa style, within the hour. We're protesting against the police and then we want the police to come help us. So it's a whole,
right,
livelihood of hypocrisy that people seem to live under. And I'm not perfect either. But it doesn't justify you just saying, like, I'm on this side, but now I'm on that side. And whatever you feel like blowing with the wind, you're a kite flyer. Whichever way the wind blows, you're gonna sail to that tune. And all of a sudden, you're so supportive of police. And I want to get to Doug Ford's comments from yesterday where he's talking about how people just want to go on with their lives and how people want their businesses to open up. So it's the hypocrisy goes right to the top, and they make people feel like it's okay to do this, like it's okay to just go back and forth on their own principles depending on how we feel on the day. It all comes down to we don't like the people who are protesting because they don't want to be vaccinated or whatever. Therefore, we can say it justifies anything we say or do against them. Let's show Doug Ford, and then we will get your reaction to this, Matt.
I hear the protesters. The province hears the protesters. The country hears the protesters. Now it's time to let the people in Ottawa get back to their lives. These businesses that have been closed for a while now, the restaurants want to reopen. So, I get it. I hear you. But we have to let the people of Ottawa live their lives. I hear the protesters.
Matt?
Wait, is he talking about... I'm confused. Is he talking about the people of Ottawa that are unvaccinated, or is he talking about the people of Ottawa that did the right thing that are uncomfortable after 5 days of protesting?
All
because
of a sudden,
people have been wanting to get back to their lives for 2 years now. So it's kind of, the irony of that is not lost on me, clearly.
all of a sudden he cares about people wanting to open up their businesses. What have they been saying for 2 years? All of a sudden people want to go back to their lives. And he claims that we hear you guys, so just stop. Where was this for anything else? Was there ever a "we hear you, natives, just stop"? We hear you, BLM, just stop. This never happened before. And now to claim that he hears people, well, you're not doing anything about it. You're not lifting restrictions. You're not ending masking. There's no talk about it at all. He just wants to sit up there. He wants to continue to eat like he does. Imagine the amount that he eats every
like
single
literally.
day. Oh, I meant it literally. Imagine the amount he eats every single day to maintain this shape of his, 400 pounds probably.
Wow.
And then to go around and tell people that they can't live their normal lives. Well, he just, lives like a king, getting rich off of his...
give me food, give me peasants.
He's the Goblin King. If we want to re-bring up the Goblin King from The Hobbit again, he just wants everything. He's happy living underground with his minions. He makes his labels. He makes money off of everything else. He opens up his factories. He's fine. Oh, Amazon's great, you guys. Walmart's great, but as soon as there's a problem, it's all hands on deck from the government to say, this is bad. We're standing up for people's rights. And we're doing the right thing, and it's these, hundreds of thousands of Canadians, this small fringe, there he is, live-action role-playing Doug Ford in the Hobbit movies. All of a sudden, they care about the people. All of a sudden, I don't know if you've been keeping up, Matt, but all of a sudden, the Conservative Party loves us. All of a sudden, the Conservative Party has a big problem with Erin O'Toole. They're probably going to kick him out now. All of a sudden, Erin O'Toole is bad. I didn't know that. For 2 years, I was told, carbon levy is great. They didn't say anything about lockdowns. They didn't say anything about forcibly confining people in COVID hotels. They didn't say anything about people not being able to travel interprovincially or out of country. They didn't say anything about businesses being shut down. They didn't say anything about people being arrested while protesting. All of a sudden, they're all on board. All of a sudden, Denise Batters and all these other people want to stand up and say how bad this is. All of a sudden, now they're going full force against Trudeau because they sense, a political opportunity. Now, Pierre Poilievre, who everybody loves, of course, I call him Canada's Trey Gowdy, talks a lot of good stuff, has a lot of great clips, doesn't get anything done. I believe he's passed one bill in the last 7 or 8 years, so that goes to show you what exactly he's done. Love the guy, love what he says, but all of a sudden now it's time to speak up. Now it's time to, say that the lockdowns aren't working, Erin O'Toole is a bad leader, all this stuff. And why, Matt Breviter? Why all of a sudden is this the right time, do you think?
Well, they smell blood. And, to speak of that clip you played of Ford, what he's really saying is, yes, I see you, I hear you, you represent 10% of the 90% in the poll, I am paying attention, and as soon as you represent 60 or more, then we will do something. That's literally what he's saying. And here's the interesting thing about our cultural moment right now. Whenever there is any sort of protest or violence, let's say, language, violence, something deemed egregious, if it comes from the left, it's framed in a way that is always in response to racism, oppression, patriarchy, etc. So it's celebrated by progressives who are also deemed as reasonable thinkers as something that we should celebrate, we should allow and give space, give a cultural moment to happen. Now, whenever that same sort of action is taken by people that are on the right or conservative, it's framed as the institution or the patriarchy lashing back in response to these freedom, progressively minded movements. So the media tone and the way we narrate, the way it's all narrated is, this is bad, this needs to be reprimanded. And this isn't new. This has been going back to, this is in response to what happened in Europe in the 30s and 40s. And literally conservative movements since then have been framed as a potentially dangerous reawakening of a dangerous far-right ideology, and we need to move away from that. And I think that talking heads, pundits, politicians have been following and perpetrating this cultural diatribe, and we've all been victim to it, and we've been going along with it. But I think that's starting to shift. And I think that's why we're seeing people like Bergen and Poilievre finally be like, oh, wait, maybe it is politically profitable to speak out against identity politics, and now's our chance to do it. Whether they have felt this way always or not is another conversation, and I don't know because I don't know these people personally, but they're starting to see that there's political points to be gained by speaking out and acting on it. And I think we can't forget that as we move forward, as this whole thing winds down and as things hopefully go back to some semblance of normal. We need to remember who's been sticking up for us 2 years ago, not just today, although the more the merrier, because we need to move on.
We have some talking from Parliament of Pierre, and then I want to get to producer what Erin O'Toole said, I think late last night, about the choices they have to make. So let's play some Pierre in Parliament here.
The Prime Minister dressed up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all. Doesn't mean every single Liberal is a racist. Just because the Prime Minister had tried to help a corporation avoid prosecution after it stole from some of Africa's poorest people doesn't mean all Liberals are racist. Just because about a half dozen Liberal MPs who are racial minorities have complained about his treatment of them does not mean that all Liberals are racist. That is guilt by association. Why doesn't the Prime Minister opt instead for personal responsibility?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that I've been clear in all of my comments, that I respect the honourable colleagues on the other side, just as I believe they respect the colleagues that are on this side and the work that we do and the people that we are. There are times in our political discourse where we see things that are abhorrent, and all I would ask is that we equally call it out. When I saw swastikas on the street, when I saw what had happened, it's time to move on. And what I would ask is, instead of trying to inflame the situation, let us de-escalate the situation. Let us work together to find a way to stop the lockdown that is happening of this city, so that citizens can move forward with their lives and any legitimate grievances can be fairly heard.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Okay.
Here's how much the
What's a
Conservatives
legitimate
actually
grievance?
care.
What's a legitimate grievance? Clearly, everything that is not get vaccinated for the rest of your life and go on welfare is an unacceptable view by the Liberals. Like, let's be honest. Like, so blackface isn't unacceptable. And why? That's something that I've really appreciated about this becoming an international story, because now international news outlets can see how much of a racist hypocrite our Prime Minister is. It's like we've been so desensitized to this blackface thing and this virtue signaling about racism, Islamophobia, etc. All these things which are terrible. Okay, they are terrible when they're truly being perpetrated. They're terrible, but they're not something to be just floundered out for political gain, which is something that our politicians have been doing for us for the last, I don't even know, a long time, since this liberal caucus since the Liberals have been in power. And the Conservatives are perpetually missing the mark by not calling this stuff out in fear of being trampled, in fear of this same white guilt thing. Like, I heard Peterson talk about how do we move on, knowing that we live on a land that was founded on bloodshed. How do we move on and reconcile in an honest way so that our guilt cannot be weaponized against us, and also so that we cannot fall victim to our own personal guilt about the situation, because that's what's being happened and it's being used for political points. And I hope Canadians are reasonable enough to see that it's all BS and we're getting played. And that's why I really appreciate that we're not just going to move past this thing about a guy who's been caught in blackface not once, not twice, at least 3 times, calling people who don't agree with him racist. The same guy who has been saying to Indigenous activists which is a reasonable request, not wanting mercury in their water. Now we can talk about the logistics as to why that is, but still demanding or asking, at least demanding that Trudeau keeps his promises, and he scoffs at them and laughs them out of events. You know, like, this is the guy. This is the guy who's the standard of morality. The guy who literally ducks and hides everything. Like, it's just so gross. Anyways, I'm glad to see that people are starting to pay attention and understand, like, how did we get here? How did we get this far gone?
I'd like to point out, though, that the Conservatives still aren't saying end the lockdowns. They still aren't saying
no, they're not.
Completely open the borders and let people fly without vaccinations. They're still sitting there, and if you bring up this freeze frame we have here, producer, they're still sitting there, all their masks. If you are able to pan to the left, you can see, I believe, Candice Bergen is double masked to Pierre Poilievre's right. Buddy in the top right there has his mask up to his eyes. So they're being so brave and calling out just like this low-hanging fruit of Justin Trudeau being a moron, which is, or at the very least, a guy who doesn't know how to do his job. But are they taking off their masks and saying we're not doing this anymore? Are they saying open up the borders? Are they saying let people fly without vaccinations? No, they're not doing any of that. They're just going after the same old thing that they've been going after, and now that more eyes are on it, they're saying this is the best course of action, because what do they still need at the end of the day? They still need Twitter's approval. For some reason, they all want to be approved by Twitter. They still need to get approval from liberal voters who will never vote for them. They want them in jail. The average liberal voter wants a lot of conservatives in jail. They want them to shut up. They want them banned from things. They want them censored. That's the average boomer on the East Coast. This is what they want. And, of course, American Democrat voters, too. The progressives, we'll call them. And the Conservative Party still wants to impress all these people. They're still afraid to take off their masks. They're still afraid to end lockdowns. And these are the people that I hope that, as you said, we're going to remember what they actually stood for the last 2 years, going on even further now. I want to move on to Erin O'Toole's statement, and then we'll get off of YouTube and we'll move on to some great footage, I think, from Lincoln Jay and Keane Simone and Sydney Fizzard. Sid Fizzard. As Ezra always said, he sounds like an 80s rock band. Sydney and the Fizzards or something. But Erin O'Toole's statement. So they want to vote Erin O'Toole out of the leadership position. They're doing a review of him. I believe it's going to be online because that's how brave they are. That's how unafraid of COVID they are, that they're going to be doing it online. Let's bring up his statement here, please. Excuse me. There are two roads, and I'm trying not to do it in my Trudeau voice. What's Erin O'Toole's voice sound like?
There are two roads open to the Conservative Party of Canada. One is a road of Randy Hillier and Derek Sloan. It is angry, negative, and extreme. It is dead end. One that would see the Party of Confederation become the NDP of the right. That's my best. That's all I got.
Very good. See, here's the thing. Randy Hillier and Derek Sloan are provincial candidates. They're also not in his party. So it's a completely dumb statement. The alternatives are not Randy Hillier. Randy Bobandy, as some of us like to call him. And I'm sure all of our Canadian audience and some of our American audience know the Trailer Park Boys reference. But Randy Bobandy is not running for leader of the Conservative Party. He doesn't like the Conservative Party. Derek Sloan is not in the Conservative Party anymore because they don't want him there. He doesn't want to be there. Not running for federal leadership. So for him to say these are the other routes you could go down doesn't make any sense. The actual routes they could go down are Pierre or Leslyn Lewis. So he doesn't even want to name his own actual competition. He wants to say he's doing a different version of the Trudeau here. Whereas Trudeau will go, the racism and the Islamophobia and, the anti-black, queer, trans folkism. Erin O'Toole say, you don't want to be alt-right, do you? You don't want to be far-right, do you? You don't want to be showing up to protests and, with all these fringe people, do you? You just want to be, the run-of-the-mill conservative who changes their view every 10 minutes. And he said in one of his statements, the Conservative Party is an evolving party. It changes over time. It doesn't hold on to old views. So basically what I hear him saying is, we're going to keep changing with the wind. We're going to keep flying our kite. Sir Isaac Newton, wherever we end up, we'll get electrocuted at any time. It doesn't matter. Let's keep shifting the Overton window. Let's keep giving in every 3 years so that the Conservative Party seems like the Liberal Party of 3 years prior. That's what Erin O'Toole wants. Did he go after defunding the CBC as he promised? No. What else? Did he say no carbon tax? No. He did a carbon levy where we decide how you spend your tax dollars. He went back on almost everything he said. I'll give him credit and assume that he didn't go back on everything. Balancing the budget, no, he still wants to spend a ton. He goes back on every conservative principle that he claimed to have. Again, I'll dial it back and say most of what he promised when he was running for leadership, and he's still like, this is logical progression. The fact that there's no slippery slope is a lie. The fact that there's no actual like ground you have to stand on, and you have to keep going further and further with transitioning your children and, you know, black, queer, trans, everything, and give all your money to the government to make you feel better, give all your money to organizations that don't like you. This is a lie. There is actual things you're allowed to stand your ground on. They may be different from you or me, Matt. They may be different from viewer to viewer of this program. You may not believe in any abortion exceptions. That's fine. You may believe in having like a flat tax. That's fine. But whatever you believe, just because, you know, Hollywood and Snapchat and Instagram tell you to put up a picture of a burning Amazon forest that actually burns every year, doesn't mean you have to change your opinion on it just because Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel cry on TV and tell you that you need to change. You are allowed to hold your ground on things, and you're allowed to have government representatives that actually hold their ground on things and not be like Doug Ford and Erin O'Toole and, you know, Justin Trudeau and all these people, Jagmeet, that all they care about is Twitter responses. All they care about is people who sit there on their computer all day and don't actually create anything. They don't actually contribute anything. They want to collect their dollars. It's okay to hold your position and hold your ground and have principles and not be like, well, I have to progress. Where has that gotten us? Where has that gotten us? There's some good progression. Of course, there's some good progression over time, but where has that gotten us? You will go to jail if you do not adhere to your child's gender pronouns. You will be fined if you say something that's offensive to somebody. You will have your Facebook or Twitter post taken down. On Twitter, if you dead name somebody. On Facebook, if you talk about, you know, the lab leak theory. On YouTube, if you question election results, you will be silenced. Keep changing for them and see what happens is all I have to say. You won't be happy, I don't think.
Jail.
Okay,
but here's the thing, right?
Go ahead.
We'll all end up in jail if we keep cowtailing to this ideology. But here's the problem. I think you can make a correlation. Like, the conservative ideology has been losing the culture war since the Renaissance, since the masters were actually. Because if you think about, you know, the influence that these painters had on culture, with this kind of strange theocracy at a time, which was the church and the state and the arts. But ever since then, like, when do you hear, other than Kanye West, like, how often do you hear people who have conservative voices who are truly influential in the culture and on kids and the way kids think? Like, you don't hear it. It's like an oxymoron almost. So unfortunately, culture is downstream, or politics are downstream from culture, and culture shapes minds. And and that's why you see, like, the cognitive dissonance of our conservative politicians, who are so, like you said, concerned with Twitter and the media space. They're so worried about what people say online and on screens, because we value this stuff so much, and it really is such a powerful tool for propaganda and shaping opinions, that people are out of touch with what people are actually saying. Like, why isn't every conservative MP out on the ground meeting these truckers right now? There's no good excuse. It's because they're drinking the Kool-Aid. They're buying what people are saying about them, and they don't want to, like, they think they can just, like, tippy toe and do this liberal light thing and win minds. Like, no, don't worry. We're not really as bad as everyone says we are. This is where it's like, come on, man, you've already lost. It's over.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for the first person to come down and say something. Trudeau refuses to speak to them. I think we've got some counter-protesters we want to show evidence of. Let's work to pull away from YouTube now. They don't deserve our wonderful... he's saying, get vaxxed, something about lockdowns. Obviously a cool guy. Obviously he's got lots of stuff to do. He's walking around with a homemade sign during the day by himself. So obviously he's got a lot of people that agree with him, Matt Brevner. Not very good at sign making either. But he has a wire.
I mean, but he's smiling. And you know what? He believes that. He really believes it. He really believes, like, come on, guys, can't we all just, like, get along, and can't we just listen, and so we can just move on? Like, people are exhausted. But I think something that's really being missed tonally by the naysayers of this movement, the naysayers of, like, of the people who don't want to get vaccinated, it's not about the vaccine. It's about complying. It's about, if I give up something that is a multiple offense against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, I've set precedent for that. So what's next? People they don't see what's happening, though. There's a war. Drea had mentioned on Twitter yesterday. She did a tweet saying something along the lines of, we're this close to winning a war that most people don't even know we're fighting.
You might even call it an info war. Here's more. Newswars.com. What's going on here, producer? We've got these guys standing in front of the trucks. They don't want them to move across. It looks like a trucker's coming out with a Canadian flag. Okay, it's this guy with the sign. What does it say? We will not
be held hostage in our city.
Oh, okay. So you have a problem with you not being able to drive down the roads in your city, which you can still walk around in, and it's mostly around Parliament. So they're okay with the government locking them down, telling them they can't go outside. Obviously, they think that's justified. You can't go to work. But as soon as people who disagree with you, like that aren't the government, that's the problem here. The government, you have to listen to everything the government says, but as soon as people who actually, you know, deliver your groceries and bring you your fun Amazon packages, as soon as they do this, then, you know, back on the government side. It's really confusing. And they wonder why totalitarian governments exist, and they wonder why all these leftist authoritarian governments get into power. Can we pull away from YouTube now? Sick of YouTube.
Yeah, let's we got to get off this.
We do.
We got things to say.
We've got Rumble rants. We've got Odyssey hyper chats. We've got